Turalyon is one of the biggest heroes of the Alliance, having played a part in some of the most daring campaigns, ultimately being lost in the invasion of Draenor and then joining the Army of the Light. Now, he is one of the main guys in the Light Army, while also being the leader of the Alliance. Additionally, Turalyon is of Lordaeron nobility, and he has shown an interest in restoring the old Alliance. Well, with the faction now in complete disarray with the loss of Anduin and the end of BFA, and the Light Army of Yrel waiting just around the portal, could Turalyon be the head of a new Light Crusade of Azeroth? Brought to you by Gamivo. Use my link to get Shadowlands in game time cheaper as well as any other game. Use code Doron for an additional discount. Turalyon is in all reality an incredibly complex character, and I'd say one of the most unique ones on all of Azeroth. Born as Lordaeron nobility, he was originally a priest, and ultimately he was one of the first 5 paladins of the Silver Hand. Then he served as one of the greatest heroes of the Alliance, having defeated the leader of the Horde, Orgrim Doomhammer. Then as the war ended, Turalyon took on the daring mission of invading through the Dark Portal to go to Draenor, and there, as the planet was ripped apart, he was seemingly lost forever. However, what we learned recently and what actually ended up happening is that he, together with Illyria, had encountered the Prime Naruk Xera, and he had joined the Army of the Light. Now, as he was separated from physical reality and the flow of time, essentially 1,000 years had passed while he had only been missing in action for a few decades in our reality. During this millennium, he had waged war against the Legion and ultimately became the High Exarch, pretty much becoming their leader. Now, keep in mind, this is actually a lot more important than most people realize. Light Army isn't just some little force, but one of the largest influences of the Light as a cosmological force, and Turalyon is their actual leader. Through Xera, he had crossed the boundaries of mortality, and ultimately, he helped us fight the Burning Legion. However, his return to Azeroth was quite a shock, which you can obviously imagine. Just think about living in a different plane of reality for 1,000 years and then, you return to your old life where not much has really changed, well, at least when compared to those 1,000 years. So obviously, he was almost a completely different person as he came back. Turalyon returned to see his former homeland taken over by the Forsaken and also completely annihilated, and that now the orcs that he once fought so fervently have their own continent and they're once again attacking the Alliance, once again in Lordaeron. Obviously, a bit of a shock, but I think he handled it decently. At first, he was completely disgusted by the Forsaken, but eventually started accepting them a bit more through Alonso's Foul. Now, however, as Anduin was abducted and is now serving the jailer, Turalyon is the new leader of the Alliance, which might actually have huge implications for the future of Azeroth. He was appointed as a regent with the support of the House of Nobles, and I can't really blame them. There really doesn't seem to be a more viable option out there. This is a legend of the Alliance, arguably the greatest hero, and he has thousands of years of experience fighting in different dimensions. I guess you could say he's quite a bit more seasoned than the very young Anduin. Now, however, I would say we are on a big crossroads where either nothing substantial will happen or we might see an all-out war in a future Light Crusade of Azeroth. Many people see Turalyon as this crazed Light Zealot, and I can agree to an extent, but I think most people attribute too much negativity to his character. He isn't really that bad. Turalyon is definitely a noble, wise, and compassionate character, but there is no denying that he did in fact commit some quite questionable actions. For example, he essentially wanted to completely eliminate Illidan, which obviously was a bit of a spur-of-the-moment action, but he refused to be cleansed forcibly by Xera, and Turalyon didn't really approve of him resisting. Then he essentially tortured prisoners with the Light to extract information, and most obviously, we recently started learning that the benevolent Light isn't really all too benevolent, and ultimately, Turalyon is at the head of it. A great example is Yrel and the Lightbound. Yrel is now the High Exarch of a faction of the Draenor Light Army, and they had essentially just taken over the entire planet and battled everyone, forcibly converting them. Other than the fact that the Light is a bit more complex now, we also have the really important storyline, and that is what will happen after Shadowlands. The reality is that after the battle for Azeroth, we only reached a ceasefire and the war never really ended. There wasn't a peace deal, and ultimately the Alliance did win. They got Stromgarde and they had completely weakened Horde presence in the Eastern Kingdoms. To add to this, there has always been a big initiative to restore Lordaeron and bring back the old human kingdom. Well, guess what? Turalyon, now the leader of the most powerful faction, was actually born as Lordaeron nobility, and he even mused how, now that the Alliance took over Stromgarde, there could be other bits of the old Alliance of Lordaeron that could also be reclaimed. Now, to tie these two together, we have the fabled Void Whisperers. The Golden One claims a vacant throne. The crown of light will bring only darkness, that you guys lambasted me for in the previous video because I said it is about Anduin. Now, obviously, while it could also refer to Anduin, it is a lot more likely that it does in fact refer to Turalyon. The Golden One, aka the High Exarch of the Light Army, claims the vacant throne of Anduin, and the other sentence could be a huge foreshadowing for the future. The crown of light will bring only darkness. So the reality is that a Light Crusade is highly likely, or Turalyon playing a big role in a future war. I honestly doubt it will be just a simple faction war, and I think the cosmological forces could be significantly involved. Obviously, this will depend on what will occur in the Shadowlands, but seriously, let's just combine what we have. There is a perfect ground for the reclamation of Lordaeron and Gilneas, and we might get alternate Draenor version 2 on Azeroth. We know very little what happened there, but it is more than obvious that Yrel acted upon the instructions of some significant force of the light and not just on her own accord. Well, she is the High Exarch of the Draenor army, and we have a High Exarch leading the Alliance on Azeroth. Additionally, Yrel owes Azeroth quite a big favor for even being there in the first place, and she might think there is no better way to repay it but to help another light servant. So maybe Turalyon could open a new dark portal, aka the Light Portal, and now the Draenei invade Azeroth and the Orcs and the Horde are the ones defending. This could additionally spur an Alliance civil war, where for the first time, the Horde wouldn't be the bad guy. Could definitely be overreaching a bit here, but it is entirely possible that nothing happens. But the reality is that the cards and the characters are definitely perfectly set up for a scenario like this if Blizzard decides to go with it. Thank you for watching. Check out what could be the expansion of the Shadowlands by clicking on the screen, and also check out Doronsmovies Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.